At the beginning of the song, we see a painter named Rami. Rami used to live with his wife, Losol, and their children. His life was going quite normally, but then one day, Rami felt like he was sinking into the ground. Wherever he sat, he was sinking into the ground as if someone was pulling him down from below. Rami did not tell his wife, Losol, about these things. He thought that all these things were just his imagination. One day, Rami was working in his studio, but he accidentally left the studio tap open. Soon, his entire studio was flooded with water. Rami was extremely scared because all these things had caused a lot of damage to his studio. He tried to save his studio by going into the water, but in the next moment, Rami was pulled underwater. He found himself in a different world where there were not just one but 3 suns. Then some tribal people appeared in front of Rami and started running towards him to catch him. Rami was very scared. Suddenly, someone pulled him back into the water, and now he was back in his timeline. In no time, his entire studio was ruined because of the water. Without the studio, he wondered how he would provide for his family. Rami was talking to his wife, Losol, but Losol had an even bigger issue that she wanted to tell Rami. In fact, Losol had fallen in love with her company's boss, and she wanted to be with him. Hearing this, Rami was very upset. On one side, his studio was completely destroyed, ruining his entire career, and on the other side, his wife was leaving him forever. Rami was surrounded by problems from all sides. To find a solution, he decided to go to his family. However, all his family members already considered Rami to be useless. They never took Rami seriously. Poor Rami. What could he do in such situations? He would just listen to his family's advice. One day, when Rami went to his kitchen to make some coffee, he saw the house cat suddenly freeze in midair. Not only that, everything in the kitchen had come to a complete stop as if someone had frozen time. Rami didn't know how, but he started sinking into the ground again. He was stuck in the middle of the floor, as if someone was pulling him down quickly from below. Now, Rami had reached that world again, just like the first time. He found himself in a jungle and, without thinking much, kept moving forward. Rami saw some tribal people in front of him who were cooking an animal they had hunted. He went to them and asked for help, but the tribesmen started chasing him to eat him. Rami, fearing for his life, ran swiftly into the jungle. He reached a village where many people were present. To save himself, he hid in a cave. He thought he was safe there, and then he teleported back to his own world. However, his kitchen was completely destroyed. When his family members saw Rami in this state, they thought he had completely lost his mind. Now, they didn't trust anything Rami said. The next day, Rami went to his studio. Many people had gathered there, demanding money from Rami. When Rami tried to talk to them, everyone suddenly froze, and Rami was pulled into the ground again. He found himself back in the other world, surrounded by tribesmen who were shouting loudly as if they were waiting for Rami. From their gestures, Rami realized they were planning to sacrifice him. Under pressure from the tribesmen, Rami jumps, but the outcome is the same. He falls down. Rami couldn't understand anything the tribesmen were saying. Then, one of the tribesmen put something in Rami's mouth. After eating it, Rami could easily understand their language. One of the older tribesmen explained everything to Rami. He told him how their people were troubled by a demon named Jute. Jute was so ferocious that he would kill anyone who came near him. Now, the tribesmen desperately needed to get rid of Jute. They had an ancient book that mentioned a brave warrior from another world. Therefore, the tribesmen were performing a ritual to bring this brave warrior to their world. Because of this ritual, Rami was experiencing those strange events. The tribesmen believed that Rami was their brave warrior and began to revere him as their leader. However, Rami doubted himself, thinking that if he couldn't even save his own love and his world, How could he fight a demon like Jute in this world? These thoughts were overwhelming and scary for Rami, as he had never fought anyone before. Rami told the tribesmen that he couldn't help them. The tribesmen didn't like to hear no, so they turned Rami upside down in anger. After this intense coercion, Rami had no choice but to agree to help them. They gave Rami a nice house where he could plan how to defeat Jute. Rami started to feel comfortable there, but he also felt very hungry. He picked up a watermelon to eat, and in that moment, he was transported back to his real world. This time, Rami didn't tell anyone about the other world. Instead, he decided to go to the library to learn more about these events. In his entire life, Rami had never been to a library. He tried seeking help from Google but found nothing useful. So, he began reading different types of books to find answers. Ramit started taking a lot of protein and exercising intensely to become more powerful. After several days of hard work, he returned to the other world. The tribal people there gave him a good sword and asked him about his plan to defeat Jute. Rami simply told them that they should leave the village, and he would protect them if any trouble arose along the way. Hearing this, the people were highly motivated. Rami led all the people to the edge of the village. The tribesmen believed that anyone who left the village would be struck by lightning and die. However, Rami stepped out of the village without any harm, showing them that it was safe. Seeing this, all the tribesmen followed Rami, now fully trusting him. After walking for a long distance, they reached a dense forest, where they encountered two of Jute's men. These men attacked them immediately. Rami, wielding his sword, faced them bravely. He managed to kill one of the men, and the other fled. The people were amazed by Rami's bravery, now certain that Rami was their savior. Rami kept returning to his world to read books in the library, learning different war techniques to create a foolproof plan to defeat Jute. He would then go back to the other world to motivate the people, convincing them to support him in the battle. Rami had become quite famous among the women in the other world, with beautiful girls always around him, but he didn't give them much attention because he still loved his wife, Losol. One night, Rami returned to his real world to meet his family. One day, after spending some time in his real world, Rami returned to the other world to find a fierce battle raging. Jute's men were attacking the villagers. Realizing he had made a mistake, Rami quickly gathered all the villagers and led them to a safer place since they were not yet ready for war. Once they reached a safe spot, Rami shared his plan with the villagers. After ensuring everything was in order, Rami set out to execute his plan. He confronted Jute's men, taunting them so they would chase him. As he had anticipated, they did exactly that. Rami led them to a strategic location where he had the villagers ready to ambush. At the right moment, Rami signaled the villagers to attack. The villagers launched a coordinated assault, killing many of Jute's men and causing the rest to flee in fear. Rami's plan was a complete success, and the villagers declared him their king. Over time, Rami became a wise and helpful ruler, assisting the villagers in their development. They even started worshipping him as a god. However, years later, when Rami returned to his real world, his behavior had changed significantly. He confronted his wife's boyfriend and scared him off. As Rami continued to do good for the villagers, he became increasingly proud and arrogant. Eventually, he started to oppress the villagers. He built a magnificent palace for himself and stopped caring about the villagers' welfare. This tyranny continued until the villagers could no longer tolerate his behavior. They decided to overthrow him. At this point, Rami was transported back to his real world. There, he realized the gravity of his mistakes and felt a deep sense of regret. Rami went to ask some of his friends for help so he could get some money to reopen his studio. Unfortunately, none of his friends were willing to help him. After a few days, he befriended a woman named Selfie, and they gradually became very close. One day, just as Selfie kissed Rami, he was teleported back to the other world. The tribal people standing before him wanted Rami to go into Jute's cave and kill him because as long as Jute was alive, they would never be safe. Rami faced Jute, who looked huge and intimidating. Jute immediately started attacking Rami. This time, Rami fought back fiercely with his sword, managing to kill Jute by mistake again. The villagers were very happy with Rami for defeating Jute, but according to their protective ritual, they had to sacrifice Rami. When Rami learned this, he tried to escape, but as the villagers caught him, some of them ended the ritual, and Rami was permanently transferred back to his real world. When Rami opened his eyes in the hospital, his wife, Losul, was there. He found out that Losul had not yet divorced him and decided to stay away from him for a while. Meanwhile, Losul realized that she truly loved Rami and ended her extramarital affair with her boss. Rami and Losul started living together again. In the other world, the tribal people built a large statue of Rami, representing their brave warrior. Rami lived happily with his family, and thus, our story comes to an end.